right, so buckle up, because today we're going deep, deep into the world of gang life.
Oh, yeah.
But with a twist.
Okay.
We're talking about Darren, former leader of the infamous Strand Gang out of Liverpool.
Right, right.
And this isn't your typical crime story.
Okay.
We're going way deeper using Guy's own words, and we have the YouTube transcript right here to explore how someone living in that world, a life completely surrounded by violence, how does that change your idea of things like loyalty, respect, family?
Well, you know, it's so interesting because even after years of, you know, basically living by a completely different code than most of us, these reflections, I think they give us this really unique window into like these universal human needs, you know, like that need to belong, wanting respect, how hard it is to actually break free from your past.
You know, you really hit it on the head, because even for people like me, right, who can't even imagine, even beginning to imagine that life, his story, like, it just makes you think, well, what are the codes that I live by? You know, what are the things that shape the choices that I make?
Absolutely.
Okay, so like right out of the gate, Guy talks about carrying a knife as a teenager.
Yeah.
Like it was, I don't know, like carrying your keys.
Right.
Just totally normal.
Just totally normal.
Part of life.
Part of life growing up.
And that's what I think is so fascinating about this.
Oh, yeah.
How violence just becomes completely normalized in certain environments.
Yeah.
And think about it. If you grow up and, you know, violence is all around you, you're seeing used to solve problems, to assert dominance.
Like it's the answer. It starts to feel, well, inevitable, doesn't it?
Like there's that famous quote, what is it? Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent.
Yeah, yeah.
But in Guy's world, it's almost like it was the first refuge, not the last.
Right.
And he even says, like, he draws this straight line between being a victim of violence himself, and he was stabbed twice as a kid.
Oh, wow.
He says, once you've been wounded with a bladed article, it becomes more purposeful for you to wound someone else.
Wow.
It's kind of chilling when you think about it.
It really gets to the heart of that cycle of violence, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Where trauma, it's not just something that you go through. It becomes like part of how you see the entire world.
It's your worldview.
Yeah, and you know, psychologists even have a name for it. Reactive aggression.
Respond to a threat with an even bigger threat, and it just keeps escalating.
And isn't that really what feeds directly into that whole victim mentality?
Oh, absolutely. He talks about that a lot. He says these young people, they feel this intense pressure to retaliate so that they don't appear weak. I mean, imagine everyone around you sees violence as strength, so you have to prove yourself.
Right.
It's such a powerful thing, and unfortunately very common.
He doesn't sugarcoat it at all either.
No.
Some of the language he uses is, it's raw.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to hear it.
Sure.
He says the minute he runs out and deals with it or retaliates, he doesn't feel like a victim anymore.
Right.
I mean, from a psychological point of view, what's going on there? Why is that feeling of agency?
Why is that so closely tied to aggression?
That is such a good question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the core of what we're talking about.
Right.
Remember, in these environments, showing vulnerability, that's weakness.
Oh, for sure.
So acting out violently, it becomes a way to regain control, regain power.
Right. Like it or not, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
But we have to understand that, right? If we want to actually break the cycle.
We do.
And it makes you think about, you know, you always hear about giving young people a voice.
Yeah.
But what if it's not about just having a voice?
Yeah.
But feeling like you've got the power to actually use it.
Right.
Because with G, violence wasn't one option of many.
Right.
It was oftentimes the only option.
The only way to be heard.
Exactly.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? If violence is the only language that you're ever taught,
right,
how can you even imagine other ways to communicate?
Right.
To solve a conflict, to stand up for yourself.
It limits your choices before you even know there are choices.
Exactly.
But okay, so then it gets even more complex.
Okay.
Because he makes this really interesting distinction between what he calls earned respect and then fear-based respect.
Okay.
And he says, and you can just hear it in his voice, he says, the respect that you take turns to hate.
Wow. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
He's talking about how unstable that kind of respect is. You know, you can force people to submit, you can scare them into doing what you want, but that only lasts so long.
Because it's totally built on fear.
Exactly.
Not actual genuine respect.
Yeah. Not real admiration. Exactly.
So how does that then play into this idea of earned respect? Because he clearly thinks that's important.
Yeah.
But the way he went about getting it, well, let's just say there was room for improvement.
Right. Well, and this is where it gets tricky.
For sure.
For G, earning respect, it was about proving yourself through action.
Right.
Through never backing down, through loyalty, through doing absolutely whatever it took to protect the people you cared about.
Right.
Now, of course, in his world, that often meant violence.
Yeah.
But I think there's a deeper principle here.
Okay.
One that we see even outside of, gang life.
You mean like the idea that respect has to be earned?
Yes, exactly.
That it's not just given to you.
It's a two-way street, It's about integrity. It's about being consistent.
Yeah.
And most importantly, making sure your actions and your words, they match up.
And what I find so fascinating is that here's G, someone who lived by this code of violence for so long.
Right.
And it seems like he's starting to question that.
It does seem that way.
He's questioning that very code.
Yeah, yeah.
It really makes you wonder, is that what he's looking for now? Like a new way to earn respect?
Yeah.
A different code to live by.
It's a really good question. And I think, he actually says something in this interview. He says, I'm starting to realize what can offend people and I'm trying to address it, which kind of suggests that he's thinking about this stuff, right?
It does.
Like he wants to change. And that's kind of hopeful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, because if even someone like who has lived a life, so deeply rooted in violence, if even he can start to question things.
Yeah.
It gives you hope that change is possible, that people can change.
Absolutely. It reminds us that people are complicated.
For sure.
They're not just one thing.
Right.
And that even someone, labeled a gang leader can still grow and change.
But going back to this whole idea of earned respect for a minute.
Okay.
It comes up again when he talks about his family, and especially his older brother.
Right.
And it's almost like it's kind of funny in a dark way.
Okay.
He talks about how his older brother would always side with his friends.
Oh, wow.
Even when G and his other brother were obviously in the wrong.
So it's like, even when it came to family.
Oh, yeah, like loyalty to a fault,
Right. And I think that's such a great example of how loyalty, which we think of as a good thing.
Right, of course.
It can get really complicated.
Also,
where do you draw the line?
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Right. When does loyalty to one person
or one group,
one idea blind you to everything else?
Like in the case of D's brother.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was so loyal to his friends, to that bond that they had.
Yeah.
That he completely missed the bigger picture.
Right. Like he couldn't even see what his brothers needed.
Exactly.
That's tough, and we all face that, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Like those competing loyalties, trying to figure out what's more important.
It's that pull, that constant pull.
Yeah. And it makes you think about the messages we get about loyalty, right? Like from our families growing up.
Totally.
Our cultures, the things we see on TV. Like sometimes those messages are pretty messed up.
They really are.
We're told to never question, that disagreeing is like betrayal.
Yeah, like blind loyalty, that's what they call it.
Right, but to me, real loyalty, it requires you to think for yourself.
Yeah.
To see the good and the bad and to still make a choice.
And maybe more importantly, being able to see when someone's using that loyalty against you.
Oh, 100%.
To control you, to manipulate you.
Absolutely. And that takes us right back to the respect that you take.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't last. It's built on fear, and it always ends badly.
Resentment, even hatred.
Yeah. And that's why we need to build environments where respect is something you earn, not something you can just demand or take from someone.
A place where people feel safe to speak up.
Yes.
To disagree, to actually be vulnerable, without being afraid.
Absolutely. Because if there's one thing we can learn from Guy's story, it's that violence, even when you think it's the only way, it never really solves anything.
It just doesn't. It's a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Exactly. A breakdown in communication, empathy, all those things.
So if we want to show young people, especially those who feel like violence is their only choice.
Yeah.
If we want to show them that there are other ways to earn respect, to find that sense of belonging, where do we even start?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
And there's no easy answer, I don't think.
Right.
But I think it starts with understanding, understanding why, understanding the psychology behind it, and then showing them that there are other ways to tell their stories.
It's like changing the narrative, right?
Exactly.
Changing the narrative. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? I mean, you're talking about young people who have only ever known violence,
right.
Environments where it's so ingrained, it's like, I don't know, it's in the water.
Right. Well, we have to start creating spaces, places where they don't feel like they have to use their fists to be heard,
To be seen,
To be seen, to be respected.
Yeah, like actual support systems.
Right. Exactly. Give them the tools to deal with conflict in a healthy way.
Show them what's possible.
Show them, yeah, exactly. Like, you can be strong and empathetic.
Right.
You can stand up for yourself without putting someone else down.
It's funny. Because even he talks about how, earned respect can actually be because love.
Yeah.
And when I first heard him say that, I thought, wow, okay, I mean.
It's kind of amazing, right?
This is coming from a guy who, spent his life in this incredibly violent world.
Living by a completely different code.
Yeah, and yet here he is talking about love.
I think it shows you how much we all crave that connection. Yeah. That feeling of belonging, something real.
That goes deeper than
Deeper than fear, deeper than power, exactly.
Yeah, and it makes you think about all those headlines.
Right.
Those stories we always hear about gang violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to just dismiss these people, to label them,
Yeah, write them off.
But Guy's story, I don't know, it's like a reminder that there's always more to the story.
There is. There's always more than meets the eye.
That meets the eye. Yeah, like these are real people.
They are.
With real emotions, real struggles.
And that's the key, right? Because, look, I'm not condoning violence.
Of course not.
But if we can understand what drives it, what those deeper needs are, maybe then we can start to actually address the problem.
So instead of just asking, how could someone do this?
Yeah.
We start asking, well, what can we do to stop it from happening?
What can we do? Exactly.
What kind of world are we creating,
It's about changing our whole perspective, right?
Yeah, like a 180-degree turn.
Less about punishment, more about understanding.
Compassion over judgment.
Exactly. It's not an easy road.
No, definitely not.
But it's a road worth taking.
It is. And, it's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's something we could all use a little more of,
For sure.
No matter who you are, where you come from.
Absolutely.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Darren Guy's world, it leaves you thinking, if earned respect can really become love, even in the most, unexpected places, what can we do in our own lives?
Right.
To start building a world where love actually has a chance.
Where violence isn't the answer.
And violence isn't the answer. Exactly. It's something to think about.
It is.
Really is.
Yeah.